Today we'll be taking a look at 7th grade Unit 5, Lesson 9, Multiplying Rational Numbers. So today I want you to be able to explain what it means when time is represented with a negative number, when we're dealing with speed and direction, and you're also going to learn how to multiply two negative numbers. So at the beginning of class today, we looked at this image just to get you thinking about time, and as someone's walking, where are they before the picture is taken? Where are they after the picture is taken? Thinking about like negative time in a sense. So already yesterday we talked about speed in a direction by calling it velocity and using a sign number. And a lot of times we would use negative velocities to represent moving west and positive velocities to represent movement to the east. Today we also look at how can we represent a time that came before a specific 0 point. So if it happened in the past, we're also going to represent that with a negative. So we can use sign numbers. If you're thinking about like a stopwatch starting and the start time, call it 0. We can call 4 seconds before the start time -4, 7 seconds after the start time +7, and just think about when it makes sense to be positive and when it makes sense to be negative. So if we think about this car, if it's at position 0 and it's moving in a positive direction, then for times after that, which we'll call positive times, it will have a positive position. So this helps us to see that if we're taking a positive number times a positive number, you are going to get a positive number. But if you look at the same car and it's at position 0, but it's moving in a negative direction, so this time we'll say moving left, and for times after that initial start time, it's going to have a negative position. You can see it in the number line above. So we're going to have this positive time, but we're going to have a negative direction. So a negative times a positive, what happens when you multiply them? You get a negative. A third scenario. This time, if a car is at position 0 and it's moving in a positive direction, if you're thinking about times before that, which are negative times in the past, it must have had a negative position there. So this helps us understand that a positive times a negative, when you multiply a positive by a negative, you get a negative. And then the last one, this is the new one for today, and it's kind of the trickiest. But if a car is at position 0 and it's moving in a negative direction, then for times before that, we'll call those negative times in the past, it must have had a positive position. So this can show us that what do you get when you multiply a negative by a negative? You get a positive. So I want you to try a few practice problems and think about your signs and what happens. So try, what is 5 times -9? This is a positive times a negative. It should be a negative, and it's -45. How about -3 times 6? All right, this is a negative times a positive. We should get a negative answer, and we get -18. Last one. What is -4 times -7? This time it's negative times a negative. We should get a positive. It is 28. All right, so check out all we learned today. For real, this was a lot to summarize. We've got a positive times a positive is always a positive. A negative times a positive, or a positive times a negative, the direction, the order doesn't matter. It's always negative. And lastly, a negative times a negative is always a positive.